What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in again. If you are new here, I do encourage you to hit the subscribe button below. I cover the biggest soccer slate on almost a daily basis here. So if that's something you're interested in, these videos should be helpful for you. So it is Sunday evening right now. We have one Premier League game tomorrow. Crystal Palace, Burnley. Not a huge matchup in terms of the pedigree of these teams, but since it is the only Premier League game, we have a pretty huge showdown slate, 100K GPP for the main GPP, and I believe that's 25K to first. Of course, it is one of those top-heavy payouts where you just get left with peanuts if you finish like ninth or worse. I think it goes from 25K down to 500 or so at ninth or 10th. So just keep that in mind if you are playing the main GPP. It is all about getting that top spot. That's where all the equity is. Personally, I tend to like to focus more of my energy on the 20 max tournaments. And I think for this slate, we've got one at $4, $1, and then there is a quarter 20 entry max as well. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this matchup. I'm going to go through the expected starting lineups and then touch on my projections as well, and then we'll get you out of here. Just from a overall perspective, Crystal Palace are at home. I think they're a slight favorite. They're projected for about a goal and a quarter. Burnley projected for 1 goal. So we've got a really low total here. Not a ton of goals expected in this one. And Crystal Palace, the slight favorite. I definitely think it's one of those matches where either team could reasonably win this. But Crystal Palace has looked pretty good. They are at home, and they do, even with some injuries, have a deeper team right now because Burnley has a ton of injuries and a handful of players that have contract disputes that are not going to be playing. So Burnley's bench here is essentially an academy team, so they really don't have any depth. That is something that could hurt them in the second half. Of course, they seemed fine last match where they were able to get a W. But as these games start to pile up here, I think the fatigue factor starts to work against Burnley more and more with each passing game. So the lineup for Burnley is going to be almost exactly, or I think exactly what we've seen for the prior 2 matches here. Jay Rodriguez is a question mark. So there is the potential that somebody else comes in for him. To be honest, I'm not even sure who that would be just because of their lack of options. But either way, Vidra is going to be in there at striker. And then this is the rest of the lineup you are going to see. For Crystal Palace, they've got a couple question marks as well. Zaha picked up an injury last match. Benteke was rested because of a potential injury. And then the goalkeeper, Guaita, also missed last match, but it looks like they're all expected to come back. But it's just something to keep an eye on, as any one of them could fail to start here. If either Zaha or Benteke are out, then Andros Townsend probably gets a start here. And I believe he's only at 5K, so a pretty nice value there. It's also possible that they play 4 in the midfield and McCarthy comes in if either Benteke or Zaha drop out. And then they would play a 4-4-2 instead of a 4-3-3. All right, that's pretty much the news and notes here for lineups. And again, if you want to look at this yourself, Fantasy Football Scout, this is definitely the best site for Premier League lineups, especially because they kind of give you an explanation of everything that's going on. They don't just throw a lineup out there. If you're looking at some other sites like Who Scored or SofaScore, not always the most accurate, and you also don't have an explanation of why that's their projected lineup. All right, so here are my projections. This is the floor, and then this is the full projection. So the floor excludes goals, assists, and clean sheet bonus. And then that, of course, is factored into the full projection. So top projected player in the slate for me is Dwight McNeal from Burnley. Although Burnley is the underdog here, Crystal Palace is a team that will let you cross the ball. They'd rather stay organized and let you have low percentage chances or cross the ball from wide. So I think that plays right into the hands of a player like Dwight McNeal, who loves to cross the ball in open play. Is probably the most dynamic player for Burnley. He also does usually contribute on some free kicks and corners. He shares those duties with Ashley Westwood. So I think McNeal is definitely one of the safest plays and a go-to cash game option on the slate. Zaha comes in next, but there is the injury question mark with him. Even if he does start, I have a slight concern that he doesn't go the full 90 just because of the snagging injury. So that's something to keep in mind. Right behind him is Jordan Ayew, and I think arguably Jordan Ayew has been in better form than Zaha, especially in terms of scoring goals. And Ayew has been going 90 minutes. I think if you look at his game log, he's gone 90 in like 10 straight matches or something like that. So it's just one of those guys that doesn't have any fitness issues apparently. So Ayew is a really strong option and probably even though the projection doesn't reflect it necessarily, probably the guy that has the highest ceiling on this slate. Right behind him is Patrick Van Aanholt, left back for Crystal Palace. He's taking set pieces. He's going to have at least a 50% share of corners. If Luka Milivojevic is out, then you could see PVA take all of these set pieces. But even when Millie is in, PVA seems to kind of have the priority now. If James McCarthy is in, he could also split some with PVA, but I think PVA and Milivojevic are in the same price range. I think $8,400 for Millie and $8K for PVA. And I probably, even though PVA is a defender, I probably lean him because he is more likely to go the full 90 minutes. And that's important here, and that's also why he's projected higher. Christian Benteke, again, he's questionable, but he could be a lower owned option with some really nice upside here, especially if you look back at his prior match against Bournemouth when he played like 85 minutes and had half a point or something like that, but he has definite upside. Ashley Westwood, just kind of a very solid but unspectacular play for Burnley. He is going to take at least half of the set pieces, probably will end up taking more than McNeal in most cases. And he does come at a discount. He does have assist upside, especially if you want to pair him with some of Burnley's set piece targets, like a Vidra or like a Tarkowski or a Ben Mee. I think that definitely makes some sense because that is where Burnley thrive, scoring set pieces. They're not great at scoring goals in open play necessarily, but they really do take advantage of teams on set pieces. Although Palace are fairly strong in the air themselves, particularly when they have a guy like Benteke to defend corners. And then there's Vidra right under him. Don't love the idea of a Burnley forward in this game just because Palace are favored. Burnley only projected for a goal. But Vidra is basically all they have for forward. So he's going to play 90 minutes. And he's not a bad player. He's certainly capable of coming up with a goal. So Townsend, if he does get a start here, he's usually a good floor play. Probably not going to have corners, but he could take a couple. In fact, I think he did take one in like the 12 minutes that he played last match. So Townsend, I think especially at his price, if he does start, a really attractive option. Probably a sub risk, but of course that would depend mainly on whether there's a healthy Zaha on the bench. If Zaha's out of the squad, and or let's even say that if Benteke and Zaha are not on the bench, then I'm all over Townsend because then he's almost certainly going to go the full 90 minutes. Charlie Taylor is the more attacking Burnley fullback. His game logs are not impressive over the last couple matches, but one of those was a 5-0 loss to Manchester City. And again, like I said, Crystal Palace will let you cross. If my memory serves me correctly, they have allowed the most crosses to the defender position in the EPL. So pretty good matchup for Charlie Taylor there. And we're getting down here. It's getting a little uglier. So we're out of the top 10 now. Peters could get a start for Burnley. There's even a chance that he starts in a midfield position just because they are so short on bodies. So that would be really interesting if Peters starts in the midfield. I would definitely have some interest in him. James McCarthy, I don't recall the price on him. If he does get a start in midfield, he could take some corners, assuming Milivojevic, God, that one's tough, is out. But that would be the only way I'm considering McCarthy. Loughton, another Burnley fullback. He does some defensive work. And again, because Palace do allow defenders to cross the ball, not a bad option to fill out a cash roster. Jay Rodriguez kind of falls in the same boat as Vidra, but he is dealing with an injury, so I don't know if he's going to go. There's a small chance that Max Meyer starts here because of injuries to Crystal Palace. I don't really like or dislike him. He's just kind of there. And then, when we're getting down here, you're just talking center backs, so not a ton to like. Unsurprisingly, Tarkowski projecting the best of the center back starters because he is very active on set pieces, and he would be the most likely Burnley guy to get on the end of a Westwood or McNeil set piece for a goal. So he does have that upside, and that's always kind of nice to have exposure to on a Showdown slate. And then, so Josh Brownhill's projection is pretty bad, but I think it's mainly because it's only based on 2 games of EPL data because he just hasn't played a lot. He's just a young player. I don't think he was in the starting 11 until the restart. So I think his projection probably needs to be adjusted up, and he's only 4,200. Does play in a midfield role. So I think he's not a bad play there. And I think if he sits, it would be Peters perhaps taking his place. And so either of them are decent options. All right, so that pretty much covers it. I think in terms of kind of some overall strategy on roster construction and game flow, it could be one of those kind of ugly games where it's just boring to watch and there's not a ton of clear-cut chances because that's just how both of these teams tend to operate. They've both done fairly well this season just by not playing too open and not giving their opponents great chances, and I think that'll kind of be the strategy that both of these teams bring into this game. So I err on the side of looking in this floor column and sticking to the players that have a solid floor. And then if we're talking about GPP, both goalkeepers are absolutely in play here. And then, just finding that that 1 or 2 goal scorers that there might be in the game. If it is a low scoring contest as expected, that could be the key to winning a GPP. So, that might just be a matter of, putting in 5 of those floor plays, and then, throwing in a guy like Ayew or Benteke or Vidra, or getting a Tarkowski set piece goal. And then the other way to take advantage of that would be if you're going to say that Tarkowski is going to, get that set piece goal, then you probably, you pair him with Westwood, and then you also throw Nick Pope in there, because when Burnley get the 1-0 lead, they're more likely to sit on it, and then Palace have to force the issue. And that game flow could just as easily go the other way, where Benteke grabs a goal, then you play Guaita. And because, I think Pope and Guaita are 2 of the better, I don't know enough about either of them to say they're great real-life goalkeepers, but they're both good goalkeepers for DFS because they are exposed to a fair number of shots in a lot of their games, and usually they're lower percentage shots just based on the way these teams play. So that gives them really high save upside. So I'd even be willing to venture and say that Pope or Guaita could be the highest scoring player on the slate. If they get a 1-0 win and they make like 5 saves, and then they get 20 points for that, and Benteke scores a goal, but he only has 14 points total. So definitely something to keep in mind here. And then I think honestly the super contrarian thing on this slate would be to just like try to stack as many goal scorers as possible, because nobody in their right mind is expecting a goal fest in this one. So if this thing ends 2-1 or 3-2, and you have exposure to all those goals, that would probably be super contrarian, and would win you the GPP. So, all right, I think that covers pretty much everything I can say about a Showdown slate. You've got the projections right here. The starting lineups. Of course, just make sure to check in on the lineups. We know what we're going to get out of Burnley, but I think there's still a lot of questions with Benteke and Zaha and Guaita. So important to make sure they're in, and then if they're not, there should be some value that definitely opens up. All right, good luck, guys. Hope you go out there and crush it tomorrow. Hope one of you wins that 25K in that main GPP. Of course, don't go and over leverage your bankroll just to do it, but if you are playing that tournament already, good luck to you. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you want more soccer content moving forward, please hit the subscribe button. I do appreciate it very much, and it lets me know that you are finding the content helpful. All right, until next time, good luck out there.